Revealed. How my daughter-in-law's shocking words transformed our home into a life-changing haven. Millie sat alone in the kitchen, the emptiness echoing louder than the clock ticking on the wall. Since George passed, her little home felt like a hollow shell. The aroma of his favorite beef stew lingered, a ghost of warmth in a place now steeped in sorrow. She glanced at the clutter of unpaid bills stacked on the counter, reminders that her life was unraveling. Just then the door swung open, and in walked Jake with Sarah, his new wife, a whirlwind of confidence and ideas that knocked the air out of Millie's lungs. "Mom, Sarah has some great ideas for the family," Jake said, excitement bubbling in his voice. Millie felt her heart drop. Sarah's energy was infectious, and despite her earnestness, Millie felt the familiar grip of resentment. "Change is necessary for growth," Sarah declared, eyes sparkling. But for Millie, it felt like an unsolicited invasion of her treasured routine. How could she let go? Just when she thought things couldn't get more complicated, the local factory, the lifeblood of their community, suddenly shuttered its doors. A series of vibrant lives reduced to whispers, leaving families scrambling to pick up the pieces. Millie noticed her neighbors' faces darkening, echoing her own fears. Yet Sarah stood resolute, pushing for something Millie had long since feared: collaboration. "Let us come together," Sarah urged, rallying neighbors to share skills, cook meals, and support each other. Millie's gut twisted. Why should they open themselves up when tradition had served them so well? But desperation clung to her like a second skin. Bills piled higher, her savings dwindled. Something had to give. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As the days wore on, Millie's interactions with Sarah shifted from stilted conversation to rippling tension that burned between them. A particularly heated moment arose when Millie snapped, "These traditions have held us together for years." Sarah's calm response shocked her. "But they also hold us back, Millie." For the first time, Millie recognized the flicker of truth in Sarah's words, igniting something deep within her. A town hall meeting. The weight of their troubles hung heavy in the room. Millie listened as her neighbors voiced their fears. Job losses, families torn apart. She glanced at Sarah, who stood up, her voice steady and filled with purpose. "We need each other more than ever. Let us rebuild." The crowd murmured, hesitantly leaning towards the hope she offered. In the moment of greatest tension, Millie found herself rising from her seat, trembling with emotion. Could she truly embrace this call for change? Could Sarah's bold vision breathe new life into the community she loved? A lump formed in her throat. It was a decision that would reshape her family ties. Millie stood at the crossroads, caught between tradition and a future that beckoned her forward. Would she find the courage to step into the unknown? Or would fear keep her clinging to the past? Millie took a deep breath, her heart racing. The murmurs around her faded into the background as she fought to gather her thoughts. The weight of every eye in the room felt like a pressure cooker, ready to burst. What if change ended the enemy? She thought, her heart thudding louder at the notion. Jake's gaze was locked on her, filled with encouragement. She could see in his eyes that he believed in this. Maybe, just maybe, this was a chance to turn the tide, not just for her, but for everyone who had shared the pain of uncertainty. Millie raised her voice, shaky yet steady. We can come together. We can forge a new path. But it's going to take all of us, not just a few." The words hung in the air for a moment, drawing the attention of her neighbors. Applause broke out from the crowd, and she could see Sarah smiling at her, a bright beacon of support. Millie felt an unexpected warmth swell inside her, a flicker of hope against the overwhelming shadows that had loomed for so long. A small voice in her head whispered, "It's not just survival. It's living." In the following days, the atmosphere shifted. Millie found herself part of a bustling group of families working together. They cooked meals, shared resources, and renovated the community center to become a hub of activity. The laughter of children playing filled the air, weeds were pulled from yards, and a garden emerged in the once abandoned lot. It was vibrant and alive, much like the hope stirring in Millie's heart. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Shadows of doubt crept in at night, as she faced solitude once more. What if this change didn't last? What if she stumbled and lost the encouragement? One evening, sitting on her porch, she noticed an empty chair across from her, the same one George used to occupy. It sat in silence, and with it came a wave of grief. She missed him fiercely, the ache palpable. But through her tears, she also felt the weight of his love urging her to let go and embrace what lay ahead. Do it for him, she whispered to the vacant seat. Millie closed her eyes, envisioning a future painted with laughter and warmth, not just for herself but for the entire community. Inspired anew, she stepped into the next town hall meeting, ready to share her vision. As the meeting commenced, Sarah took the floor once more. "We have made incredible progress," she said, her enthusiasm spilling over. "It's time for the next step, a festival to celebrate our resilience." Cheers erupted from the crowd. Millie felt her pulse quicken. She wanted to contribute more, to be part of this renewal. However, doubts dashed through her mind. Was she ready for this responsibility? Would they be able to pull together a festival? Just as everyone started brainstorming ideas, a knock echoed through her thoughts, and she looked up sharply to see a familiar figure. Rita, her neighbor who had seemed lost in grief since her husband died last year. Rita stepped forward, and her small voice quivered as she spoke. "I want to help, but I'm not sure how." Millie's heart swelled. She realized this was the connection they all needed, the strength and vulnerability. As they gathered around Rita, sharing ideas and maps of the neighborhood, Millie felt a pull, a tide of determination and purpose rushing through her veins. She had not just accepted change, she had activated it, nurtured it, and now it was showing early signs of blooming. As they moved forward, planning together, a question lurked just beneath the surface. Could their budding community withstand the storms that lay ahead? With uncertainty hanging thick in the air, Millie could only hope that they had built something enduring enough to weather all that life could throw their way. And deep down, she sensed that this was only the beginning of their journey together. Millie dove headfirst into the preparations for the festival, her enthusiasm contagious as she rallied support from her neighbors. Posters adorned houses and children clutched brightly colored flyers as they darted around the community center, exuding a boundless energy that Millie hadn't felt in years. Every night was filled with laughter and brainstorming sessions, the crisp autumn air humming with possibilities. Sarah, ever the planner, organized committees. They assigned tasks: food, music, decorations. Millie gravitated toward organizing activities for the kids, relishing the chance to bring joy to others. But even as hope fluttered in her chest, doubt reared its head. One frigid night, she lay awake listening to the wind howl outside, uncertainty creeping back in. What if the children didn't enjoy the festival? What if no one came? The fear twisted like a knife, and she turned restlessly in bed, haunted by questions she couldn't answer. The next morning she hesitated at the community center's door, feeling the weight of her worries settle on her shoulders. But just as she was about to turn away, she caught sight of Rita. The woman was fumbling with a grand stack of colorful bunting, her brow furrowed in concentration. When she turned and saw Millie, an earnest smile broke across her face. "Hey there. Need some help?" Millie chuckled softly, her heart lifting at the sight of her neighbor working hard and smiling. "Looks like you've got everything covered." Rita waved her over, enthusiasm bubbling in her voice. "Not without you. The kids are super excited about the games. I thought maybe we could set up a scavenger hunt?" As they planned together, their ideas flowing like a fresh stream, Millie could feel her worries begin to dissolve. Rita was more than just a neighbor now, she was a partner, a friend. They brainstormed ideas until they had a colorful collection of games, laughter, and activities that would light up that cold October day. Days melted into weeks, and the festival loomed closer. The community buzzed with anticipation, yet in her quieter moments, Millie still felt prickles of doubt. How would they manage to pull this off? Then one evening she noticed Jake standing at the entrance of the community center, his arms crossed, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Jake, is everything okay?" she asked, stepping closer. He hesitated for a moment, then let out a sigh. "It's just I'm amazed at what you all have accomplished. But I worry people might think we're reaching too far. What if they don't show?" Millie felt a pang in her chest. "You really think that? I mean, you never know." His vulnerability tugged at her heart, and that moment, Millie realized that they were all navigating the same uncertainty. Even amidst hope, fears lingered waiting in the shadows, tempting them to retreat. She took a deep breath, then spoke with conviction. We'll never know unless we try. Look around us, Jake. This isn't just a festival. It's more than that. It's a new beginning for all of us. Jake's eyes softened, and the weight eased from his shoulders. You're right. Thank you for reminding me. The festival arrived bright and sunny, adorned with the colorful efforts of the community. Millie watched as families filled the park, faces alive with joy and laughter. Children raced from game to game, their spirits lifted high, while neighbors exchanged stories and smiles. But as the festivities continued, one nervous thought clung to Millie. If this moment could fade, what would fill its place? She locked eyes with Rita, who was cheering on the kids at the scavenger hunt. The warmth of community enveloped them both. The journey they had started needed nurturing. It couldn't stop just here as the sun dipped low, casting an orange glow over the crowd. Millie heard a familiar voice calling for attention. It was Sarah again, stepping up to the makeshift stage. Everyone, I have a special announcement. Tension hung in the air. Millie felt her heart thump in rhythm with the excitement. But what would Sarah reveal? Would it further unite them or challenge them in ways they weren't ready for? The crowd hushed and Millie's mind raced. What would come next in this unfolding tapestry of their lives together? The murmurs in the crowd faded as Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the sea of faces. I want to thank everyone for coming together today. This festival is a testament to our community spirit. She began, her voice steady but laced with emotion. But I have exciting news to share. We're planning a spring festival next. Gasps arose, followed by a mix of cheers and uncertain whispers. Millie felt her stomach drop. Spring. Just as they had poured their hearts into this autumn festival, now it seemed like they barely had a moment to breathe before diving into another undertaking. Rita's eyes sparkled with excitement, completely brushing off Millie's apprehension. Can you imagine? Another chance to celebrate together. Her enthusiasm was infectious, but Millie felt a tug of uncertainty weaving through her excitement. Was this too much too soon? Millie turned to Jake, who was also absorbed in Sarah's proposal. The delight on his face was evident, yet his earlier worries lingered in the lines of his forehead. Could they really sustain this momentum? As Sarah continued, outlining potential dates and themes, Millie's mind raced. They had just built something beautiful, and the thought of carrying this energy into another season was both exciting and terrifying. She felt an impulse to stand up, to voice her concern about it all. But the surge of encouragement from the crowd made her hesitate. What would everyone think? After Sarah concluded, the crowd erupted into applause, the sound ringing with hope and possibility. Millie clapped, her hands moving mechanically as a smile stretched across her face. But deep inside, questions coiled tighter than ever. Millie, what do you think? Rita nudged her, still buzzing with excitement. We need your spark for the next one. I can't imagine spring without these games we created. Yeah, Millie, Jake chimed in, a grin brightening his features. You've brought so much energy to the community. We'll need you more than ever. Tension gripped her heart. It didn't feel fair to say she wanted a break. She loved what they had built, but was there enough energy left in the tank? Every glorious moment they had shared rang true in her heart, but the fear of burnout loomed large. I think we should take a moment to celebrate what we've done, she stammered, searching for the right words. We should enjoy the success of today before jumping into planning again. Her voice trembled, but she could see the understanding in Jake's eyes, a reflection of her own fears. While some neighbors nodded, others seemed eager to snap into action. Sarah, unfazed, smiled warmly. We can celebrate today and reflect. Planning an event takes time. The crowd murmured in agreement, but a few voices wanted to start brainstorming now. Millie's heart raced. This was going to be more challenging than she thought. Would everyone listen, or would her fears drown in a sea of excitement? As the sun finally dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows over the park filled with laughter and joy, Millie took a deep breath. Surrounded by warmth, she realized that their success didn't hinge on a single festival. It flourished in their connections, their shared hopes. But as she caught sight of her neighbors discussing the next event with fervor, a knot tightened in her stomach. Could they carry this momentum forward without losing the heart that had built it all? The thought echoed in her mind, leaving her unsettled. What if the pressure to keep this all alive threatened the joy they had just created? Would they face the challenge head-on and risk their community spirit? Or could they find balance between celebration and planning? Millie knew one thing. She'd have to find her voice in this whirlwind, or risk losing everything they had built. What path would she choose next? Millie stood on the edge of the gathering, her fingers nervously fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. The laughter around her felt like a distant echo, a warmth she could only partially absorb. Each cheer and clap from her community felt like a responsibility piling on her shoulders, heavier with every passing moment. She wanted to leap in with joy, to float on the current of excitement, but the undercurrent of doubt tugged at her soul. "Millie, come on," Rita urged, nudging her shoulder playfully. "What do you think the theme should be? How about a garden party? We could fill it with flowers and laughter." "A garden party sounds great," Jake added enthusiastically, his eyes sparkling with ideas. "We could have games that involve planting seeds. It ties in so perfectly with spring." The conversation buzzed around her like a swarm of bees, a mix of chocolate brownies, warm cider, and vibrant energy that filled the night air. Millie clutched her hands tighter, trying to quell her unease. I just think we should maybe take a moment before anyone jumps into ideas," she insisted, hoping to stem the tide. Sarah's gaze softened as it landed on Millie. "I hear you, Millie. But how do we keep the momentum going without planning right away?" Millie opened her mouth to respond, but the weight of anticipation filled the air, stifling her thoughts. Finally, she sighed, "I just think we need time to breathe. We've worked so hard for this. It's important to celebrate properly. Can't we take a break?" A soft wave of silence washed over the crowd, heads tilting in contemplation. The chatter dimmed, replaced with thoughtful glances. Millie felt both relieved and terrified. Her words had resonated, yet the concern for what might come next licked at her heels like a persistent shadow. "Are we okay with that?" Jake asked, his voice quieter now. "What if we lose our spark if we don't start planning? This community deserves the spring festival, but we also need to take care of ourselves." One small voice piped up from the back. "I want to enjoy what we've done. We should celebrate today first." That voice sent a ripple through the crowd, heads nodding in agreement one by one, like flowers swaying in the wind. The weight on Millie's chest lightened ever so slightly. The realization dawned on her that perhaps she wasn't alone in this. There were others who felt overwhelmed too, who cherished the moment just like she did. Millie's eyes met Jake's across the crowd, a silent understanding passing between them. He smiled warmly, and it soothed her worries. "All right then," Sarah said, clapping her hands together for focus. "How about we make tonight our celebration? Let us have a few fun contests, share stories of what today means to us, and then we can all huddle to talk about spring later." Cheers erupted, and Millie allowed herself to join in, clapping along though still holding on to her fears. She turned to Rita, who looked squarely determined. "See, sometimes it just takes a word or two to shift the energy." "You spoke from your heart," Millie replied, surprise creeping into her voice. She hadn't realized how freeing it felt to vocalize her worries. Taking a deep breath, Millie glanced back at the crowd as they began to form groups for games and laughter. In that moment, she understood the delicate balance of community, of not only giving but also receiving, of celebrating the present while cautiously eyeing the future. But as she felt excitement start to creep back in, another thought nagged at her. Would sharing her apprehensions truly honor the spirit of community they had built, or would it pull them apart? With a new awareness blooming in her heart, she wondered how she would navigate this landscape of emotions moving forward. Would she continue to voice her concerns, or would she tuck them away to keep the peace? As she watched her friends and neighbors revel in this shared moment, Millie knew one thing for sure: the festival would be a turning point, but it was just the beginning of a far larger journey ahead. What choices would she make to support her community, while safeguarding her own heart? The festivities unfolded around Millie like a burst of color on a dreary day. Laughter erupted as duct tape tug-of-war commenced, the crowd dividing into two teams, all competing fiercely, yet playfully. She watched from the sidelines as Jake, usually the jokester, got himself caught in a hilariously sticky situation. He tripped and spun, arms flailing, drawing an uproar of laughter. For the first time in what felt like ages, she began to smile genuinely. Rita, dragging her into the chaos, exclaimed, "Come on, Millie. You can't just stand there. Millie hesitated, feeling the tug of her earlier anxieties, but Rita's infectious energy pulled her forward. Before she knew it, she was weaving through the crowd, laughter mixing with the cool evening air as she joined her friends, challenges forgotten in the moment as the games wound down. The group gathered under a sprawling oak tree, the stars twinkling above like distant fireflies. A sense of camaraderie enveloped them, and Millie felt the urge to share her thoughts once again. But this time there was no knot in her stomach. She felt ready. Can we take a few moments to share what today means to us? Millie's voice rang clearly, and heads turned her way. It was a lightness in her chest. It was as if she was finally owning her place among them. I think it would be nice to hear everyone's perspective. Jake nodded enthusiastically, while Sarah smiled encouragingly. What a wonderful idea. Who wants to start? As the first volunteer shared their story how the community fueled their dreams during their darkest days, the mood evolved from joyful to something deeper. Each storyteller revealed their struggles and triumphs, weaving a fabric of shared experiences. Millie listened intently, her heart swelling with gratitude and a tightening sense of connection. When the time arrived for her to speak, she hesitated for a mere moment. Then she took a breath and began. Today has reminded me how vital it is to embrace our feelings. Her voice trembled slightly, but she pressed on. I felt lost and overwhelmed as we started planning our spring festival. But seeing everyone come together like this, it shifted something in me. Owners of attentive faces watched her, some nodding and others leaning in closer. It wasn't just a gathering anymore. It was a sanctuary of shared vulnerability. Millie continued, I realized that we carry not only our dreams for this community, but also the weight of our fears and doubts. And that's okay because we're not alone. We're all in this together. A profound silence blanketed them. When she finished, the crowd erupted in cheers, but something deeper flowed beneath their applause: understanding and acceptance. Then Rita, eyes sparkling, added, Millie, you're so right. If we can be honest with one another, we can be even stronger. It's not just about the festival. It's about us. The connections we build. As the focus shifted back to games and laughter, Millie felt a shift in the air. A different kind of bond forming around her. She didn't just belong. She realized she could influence the community in ways she never imagined. But lurking at the back of her mind was the question she couldn't shake. What if being so open brought her closer, but also risked backlash or misunderstanding later on? The fear made her pulse race, but with it came a flicker of determination. That night ended with sweet desserts and live music. Millie danced under the moonlight, surrounded by laughter and joy. Yet in her heart, a quiet storm brewed. What if her truth brought unexpected consequences? Little did she know, the journey was only beginning, and Millie would have to confront the real tests of her courage as the spring festival loomed ever closer. Would she continue to face her fears, or let them dictate her journey ahead? The day after the festival was a blend of fatigue and exhilaration. Millie awoke to sunlight streaming through her window, illuminating the room. Yet as she rubbed her eyes awake, the joy from the previous night felt tinged with uncertainty. Her heart raced at the memory of sharing her thoughts, feeling the warmth of acceptance. But those lingering fears were like shadows that danced just beyond her line of sight. Over breakfast, her mother noticed her distracted demeanor. You okay, Millie? She asked, her tone sweet and concerned. Yeah, just thinking about everything, Millie replied, forcing a smile. Her mother reached across the table, her hand warm and reassuring. You did a great job at the festival, you know. People needed to hear your thoughts. I think it made an impact. Millie nodded, but the gnawing question in her heart wouldn't let go. What would happen when the novelty faded? When the vulnerability she had shared became a topic of gossip or misunderstanding? The thought made her stomach twist. That afternoon she decided to go for a walk. The streets were alive with blooming flowers and birds chirping, the world around her vibrant and beautiful. Yet the more she walked, the more the tension in her chest grew. Each smile from a passerby felt like a reminder of the burden of honesty she had taken on. She sat on a bench in the town square, watching children play. Their laughter was infectious, but she felt a world of weight in her heart. Would they too one day carry the same burden she felt? The thought was unsettling. Suddenly she spotted Jake walking towards her, his face lighting up at the sight of her. Hey, mind if I join? Millie smiled, grateful for the distraction. Of course. As they talked about the festival, Jake steered the conversation toward their school projects and other light topics. The ease of being around him helped lift her spirits a little. Yet, even amidst their laughter, Millie couldn't shake the knot of fear tightening in her gut. "Hey," Jake said, tilting his head as he caught her gaze drifting. "You okay? You seem a little off today." She hesitated. Could she share this doubt? The risk felt daunting. But as his eyes softened, she found herself spilling her fears. "I just can't shake the feeling that being so open might backfire on me. What if I said too much?" Jake was quiet for a moment, his brow furrowing. "Millie, it takes guts to be honest. You're inspiring others to share their truths. Look at how everyone reacted last night." His words felt good, but still. "What if they don't understand? What if they judge me?" He shrugged casually, leaning back on the bench. "Then that S on them, not you. You can't control how people react. But you can control how you respond to them. Being open is a strength, not a weakness." She appreciated his perspective but needed more. "But what if I fail? What if my voice brings trouble? I don't want to hurt anyone." Jake took a deep breath as if weighing his words. "If you're being genuine and kind, how can it be wrong? Fear only has power if you let it. Facing it is how we grow." His confidence stirred something inside her, a flicker of hope. But doubt still clouded her mind. How could she trust that things would work out? As dusk approached, the sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. Millie took a deep breath, trying to absorb all she could of the scenery. There had to be a way to balance honesty with caution, didn't he there? Just then, Rita came running up the path, excitement radiating from her. "Millie, you have to come. There's something happening at the community center that you'll want to see." Intrigued and still slightly apprehensive, Millie exchanged glances with Jake. There was urgency in Rita's tone. As she stood, a new electric thrill surged through her curiosity, fighting against her concerns. Together they followed Rita, unaware that the upcoming event might require more courage than she had ever imagined. Would facing this next challenge help boost her confidence, or would it plunge her deeper into her fears? The community center loomed ahead, its bright lights spilling into the evening air, casting a welcoming glow over animated figures streaming in and out. As Millie, Jake, and Rita approached, laughter and chatter drifted toward them, weaving together a tapestry of excitement and curiosity. Millie's heart began to race, not just from the thrill of the awaited revelation, but also from an unshakable anxiety gnawing at her insides. "What is happening?" Millie whispered to Rita, her voice barely above the cacophony swirling around them. Rita clasped her hands, bouncing on her heels. "It's a community talent showcase. Everyone's sharing something special tonight. I think you should sign up." The suggestion struck Millie like a thunderbolt. "Share something? Here." The fear crawled back, curling tightly around her chest. "I'm not sure. I mean, there are so many talented people here." Jake nudged her gently, the warmth of his presence comforting. "You've got a story to tell, Millie. Why not share that?" "Yes," Rita chimed in, her eyes sparkling. "Everyone would love to hear what you've got to say." She felt both encouraged and terrified. The evening promised to be filled with inspiration, but to stand up before the community again pushed her fears to the forefront. The shadows of judgment lingered just out of sight, and she could almost hear the whispered critiques in her head. "Can I just watch?" Millie asked, feeling her heartbeat quicken. "What if I make a fool of myself?" Jake's gaze met hers, firm yet gentle. "You won't. Every step you take is one toward growing. Remember what I said about being genuine? This is an incredible chance for you to embrace that." His words sparked a flicker of courage deep within her, but it was overshadowed by her insecurities. The night air buzzed with energy as familiar faces appeared in the crowd, some reveling in their talents, others supporting friends and family members. It was beautiful, yet Millie felt small. "I think I need a moment," she managed, her feet itching to run away. "Let us sit for a second," Jake suggested. He guided her to a quieter corner just off the main hall, away from the frenetic energy. They settled onto a bench, the noise fading to a dull hum. "I don't know if I can do it," Millie admitted, her voice trembling. "What if I fall flat?" Jake gave her a reassuring smile. "Remember, this isn't about being perfect. It's about being you, real and honest. That's what people relate to." Millie sighed, mulling over his words. The space felt charged with potential, urging her to step outside her comfort zone. She could almost taste the opportunity, but fear held her back like a heavy anchor. Just then, a young girl from the audience took the stage. The moment she opened her mouth to sing, the room fell silent. Millie's heart swelled as the girl poured her heart into the song, her vulnerability echoing what Millie had felt only days before. There was something empowering in her honesty, something that ignited a spark deep within Millie's core. "What if I could touch just one person like that?" Millie whispered, her eyes glued to the young girl's performance. "That's the spirit," Jake said, his voice buoyant. "You have that power too. You just have to believe it's there." Millie breathed in deeply. Was she ready to tap into that power? Could she let go of her fears and embrace what made her unique? As the last note rang out and the audience erupted in applause, a voice inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, it was time to take that leap. She stood, heart pounding, an unfamiliar sense of determination coursing through her. With one last glance at Jake, she straightened her shoulders. "Okay, I'll do it." But as she maneuvered through the crowd, approaching the registration table, a sudden doubt washed over her again. What if this newfound courage slipped away? What if standing up to speak turned into a disaster? Just as she opened her mouth to back out, a familiar face caught her eye. Jessica, the classmate who had always been a quiet supporter, now stood nearby, her expression radiating warmth. Millie's heart scored a deep thrum of recognition. Would this connection help her push through? Millie's next step hung in the balance, her heart pulsing with anticipation. The crowd surged around her, the stakes suddenly feeling higher than ever. Would the act of sharing transform her fear into strength? Or would it reveal deeper apprehensions she couldn't yet face? As she approached the sign-up sheet, a surge of excitement mixed with dread swirled within her. What would she find when she faced her fears head-on? The buzz of the community center surrounded Millie like a warm embrace, but the weight in her stomach felt like a cold stone. She glanced back at Jake, who had his thumbs up, a beacon of support in a sea of uncertainty. But the moment her gaze shifted to the registration table, her heart raced with a cocktail of excitement and fear. What if nobody cared about her story? What if her voice trembled and the words tangled in her throat? Jessica noticed Millie's hesitation and took a step closer, her smile radiating encouragement. "You can do this, Millie. Just think of how many people need to hear your truth. Everyone has something to share." Millie took a deep breath. Jessica's words echoed in her mind, urging her to step into the light rather than retreat into the shadows. With trembling fingers she reached for the pen, but the moment felt monumental. "Come on, let us do it together," Jessica offered, slipping her arm through Millie's. As they approached the table, the energy from the crowd shifted. People laughed, celebrated, and shared their own stories on stage, and each moment added a little fuel to Millie's flickering courage. She could feel a collective hope rising around her, a chorus of shared vulnerability that made the idea of sharing seem less daunting. With her heart pounding like a drum, Millie finally scrawled her name on the sheet. The weight of that tiny action felt monumental, like shedding a layer that had kept her hidden for far too long. "See, you did it," Jessica cheered, and it felt as if the applause came not just from the audience, but from a part of Millie that had long been silenced. The breakthrough felt exhilarating. As they stepped away from the table, Jake joined them, a proud smile lighting up his face. "I'm so proud of you." Millie laughed lightly, a mix of relief and anxiety still swirling in her chest. "Now what?" "Now we wait for your turn," Jake replied, his tone confident. "And in the meantime we'll be here cheering for you." The minutes felt like hours as more performers took the stage. Each act added warmth to the atmosphere, and Millie found herself leaning closer to the edge of her seat, her anticipation growing. A spoken-word artist began her piece, weaving tales of identity and self-discovery. Millie couldn't help but feel a connection to the young woman's words. Each verse peeled back layers of doubt, illuminating the courage it took to stand before an audience with raw honesty. A breakthrough moment clicked inside her. The realization struck that sharing her story wasn't about perfection. It was about connection, about showing the raw parts of being human that others might relate to. When the applause thundered for the artist, Millie could feel the energy ripple through the room. It was electric, a sense of togetherness that made her heart swell. Suddenly the host called her name. Millie felt as if time slowed. The world around her blurred. And all she could hear was the rush of her heartbeat. "Go on, you've got this," Jake whispered as he squeezed her shoulder gently. Facing the stage felt like stepping into a spotlight, a light that warmed and terrified her at once. Each step forward resonated with her heartbeat, the tension palpable as she crossed the threshold. The moment she stood at the microphone, all eyes on her, the sensation was a mix of fear and exhilaration. She could feel the collective breath of the audience, their expectations hanging in the air. She inhaled deeply. Millie had stepped into a room full of community, a space where her voice could resonate and her story could unfold. What she didn't expect was the overwhelming wave of emotion that washed over her, gripping her throat and filling her eyes with tears. "Hi, I'm Millie," she began, her voice steadying as she looked out to the faces in the crowd. But just as she was about to share her heart, a familiar face she didn't expect to see appeared at the back of the room, and the surprise it brought struck a different chord in her heart. The night was just beginning, and Millie realized she was standing at the edge of a door she had only just chosen to open. What awaited her on the other side was still unknown. Millie stood at the microphone, heart racing, surrounded by faces filled with anticipation. Just an instant ago she had felt uncertain, but now with a friendly face amongst the crowd, something brightened within her. It was Jessica, smiling widely, the same girl who had encouraged her to step forward. In that moment Millie felt the warmth of connection wrap around her like a cozy blanket. "Hi, I'm Millie," she said, her voice shaking but steadier than before. "I know many of you, and some of you may not know me at all, but I want to share a little of my journey with you." A hush settled over the room. She took a breath and felt the collective energy lift her. "When I lost my husband, George, I thought my life had come to an end. I wandered through days in a fog, feeling lost, an empty shell of the woman I used to be. This home," she gestured toward her community, "felt so distant. I thought tradition was all I had left." As she spoke, she saw a few heads nod, resonating with the feelings of loss she had buried so deep. The rawness of her battle broke through the barriers between her heart and those around her. But then Sarah and Jake showed up, and I realized there was hope in change. At first it felt like an invasion, but looking around at all of you, I see what we've built together. We organized, we shared, we cried and laughed. I realized we are stronger together. This community isn't just a collection of houses. It's family. Together we've woven a tapestry of connection filled with love and strength. There was a ripple of agreement in the crowd. Millie saw the glimmering support in their eyes, the soft smiles that showed they understood. So much uncertainty lay ahead as we prepared for the festival, but it turned into something incredible. A rainbow after a storm. I realized that vulnerability isn't a weakness. It is power. It connects us. The energy surged as she continued, heart brimming. Being honest about our fears and joys allows us to see each other. Really see each other. Together we've created a haven, a community where we can let down our masks and truly belong. Applause erupted like fireworks, cutting through the air with joyous energy. Millie could hardly believe this was real. She was doing this. But even after tonight, my heart feels a flutter of doubt. What if we can't keep this momentum? What if things change again? She paused, letting the silence settle. I've realized change is a part of life. It brings new challenges, but it also brings opportunities. I want us to celebrate our victories, our shared experiences. Let's promise to always lean on one another, no matter what storms come our way. I believe in us. With each word she felt lighter, like an anchor had lifted from her spirit. She saw Jake in the front, his eyes gleaming pride, and realized she wasn't just sharing her fears. She was weaving their shared story into something beautiful. As she stepped back from the microphone, the crowd erupted into wild cheers and applause, but the love within those sounds hit her like a wave. Millie felt tears of joy streaming down her face, and she smiled radiantly. Then she caught sight of Sarah stepping forward to embrace her, wrapping her in warmth. "You're a rock star, Millie," she exclaimed. The connection was palpable, underscoring the transformation they had all undergone together. The night continued with laughter, stories, and renewed commitments to stay connected. Millie felt such an incredible sense of peace and joy. Outside, the crisp night air brushed against her skin, and the stars twinkled above, symbolizing the endless possibilities ahead. Standing arm in arm with her community, Millie glanced at the faces surrounding her friends, neighbors, family and knew that they could cultivate the bonds that would outlast any storm. This is just the beginning, she whispered to herself, feeling the pulse of hope within her. As they exited the community center, laughter echoed, and Millie reveled in the connection that wasn't just for tonight. It was a commitment, a promise, and with that she was ready to embrace whatever came next, strengthened by her community and her own resilience. Now more than ever it was clear. They were in this together. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and comment your feelings about this inspiring ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. True fans understand how important your support is for this channel.